My name is Sarah, and I'm a 32-year-old graphic designer living in Austin, Texas. Life, for the most part, was good. I had a job I loved, a quirky little bungalow filled with vintage finds, and a ridiculously adorable rescue dog named Gus. But the best part of my life was undoubtedly my fiancé, Mark. He was kind, funny, and had the most amazing blue eyes that could make my heart melt with a single glance. We were head over heels for each other and planning our dream wedding. We envisioned a rustic chic affair, set against the backdrop of the Texas Hill Country, with wildflowers, string lights, and all our closest friends and family. The only cloud hanging over our otherwise sunny horizon was Mark's mother, Patricia. From the moment Mark introduced us, Patricia made it clear she wasn't a fan. She saw me as an unsuitable match for her precious son, someone who didn't quite measure up to her high standards. Patricia was the epitome of a Southern socialite, always impeccably dressed, dripping in pearls, and with a sharp tongue that could cut through steel. She had a vision of Mark marrying someone from her exclusive social circle, someone who would uphold the family's legacy. I, with my art degree and my penchant for vintage dresses, simply didn't fit the bill. Initially, I tried to win her over. I brought her flowers, offered to help with errands, and attempted to engage in polite conversation. But every effort was met with thinly veiled disdain and passive-aggressive comments. She would constantly criticize my appearance, my career choices, and even the way I decorated my home. Mark always tried to mediate, reassuring me that his mother was just set in her ways and that I shouldn't take her remarks to heart. But it was hard to ignore the constant negativity, especially as the wedding planning progressed. Patricia made it her mission to interfere with every aspect of the wedding. She disapproved of the venue, the flowers, the menu, and even my dress. She constantly offered suggestions, which were, in reality, demands disguised as helpful advice. She insisted on inviting dozens of her own friends and acquaintances, people we barely knew, effectively hijacking our guest list. Every decision became a battle, and I felt like I was constantly fighting to maintain control of my own wedding. Despite Mark's attempts to intervene, Patricia always seemed to find a way to undermine our plans. She'd call vendors behind our backs, change orders, and spread rumors among the family about my supposed lack of taste and sophistication. It was exhausting and incredibly stressful. Yet, I naively thought that once the wedding was over, things would improve. That once Patricia saw how happy Mark and I were together, she would finally accept me. Boy, was I wrong. As the wedding day approached, Patricia's sabotage intensified, leaving me wondering if our special day would be ruined before it even began. The week before the wedding was a whirlwind of last-minute preparations, vendor confirmations, and seating chart adjustments. I was already stressed to the max, but Patricia seemed determined to push me over the edge. She started by accidentally leaking details about the wedding to the local newspaper, including the date, time, and location, despite our explicit request for privacy. Then, she managed to convince the caterer to swap out our carefully curated menu of locally sourced dishes for a bland, generic buffet. When I confronted her about it, she feigned ignorance, claiming it was just a misunderstanding. But the final straw came the day before the wedding. I received a frantic call from my florist, informing me that Patricia had canceled our order of wildflowers and replaced them with dozens of white roses, her favorite flower. White roses, while beautiful, were the complete opposite of the rustic, whimsical aesthetic we had envisioned. I was devastated. It felt like Patricia was deliberately trying to erase my personality from the wedding, transforming it into her own personal showcase. That night, I broke down in tears. I felt like I was losing control of everything, that Patricia was slowly but surely dismantling our dream wedding. Mark held me close, whispering words of comfort and promising that we wouldn't let his mother ruin our special day. He suggested we elope, just the two of us, and forget about the whole elaborate affair. But I refused. I had spent months planning this wedding, pouring my heart and soul into every detail. I wasn't going to let Patricia win. We decided to confront her together, to lay down the law and demand that she stop interfering. The next morning, we drove to her house, determined to put an end to her sabotage once and for all. Little did I know, the worst was yet to come, and Patricia's final act of cruelty would leave me questioning everything. We arrived at Patricia's sprawling mansion, a monument to her wealth and status, feeling a mix of anger and trepidation. Mark took my hand, offering a reassuring squeeze as we walked up the long driveway. The front door was opened by her impeccably dressed housekeeper, who ushered us into the formal living room. Patricia was seated on a velvet chaise lounge, sipping tea and looking every bit the Southern matriarch. As soon as she saw us, a smug smile spread across her face. "Mark, darling, what a pleasant surprise," she said, her voice dripping with false sweetness. "And Sarah, how lovely to see you. I trust you're not too stressed with all the wedding preparations." I took a deep breath, trying to maintain my composure. "Patricia, we need to talk," I said, my voice trembling slightly. "We know you've been interfering with the wedding plans and we need you to stop." Patricia's smile widened. "Interfering? My dear, I'm simply trying to help. You clearly lack the experience and sophistication to pull off an event of this magnitude." Mark stepped forward, his eyes blazing with anger. "Mom, that's enough. This is our wedding, and we want it to be our way. You need to respect our wishes." Patricia let out a theatrical sigh. "Oh, Mark, you're being so naive, don't you see? I'm doing this for you. Sarah is not the right woman for you. She's not one of us." Her words stung, but I refused to let her see me crumble. "Patricia, I love Mark and he loves me. That's all that matters." Patricia chuckled. "Love, that's a fleeting emotion, my dear. What about family, legacy, social standing? These are the things that truly matter." She then proceeded to launch into a tirade about my shortcomings, my lack of pedigree, and my unsuitability as a wife for her son. She even brought up my parents, insinuating that their modest background made me unworthy of the family name. I stood there, stunned and humiliated, as Patricia unleashed her venom. Mark tried to defend me, but she brushed him aside, her words growing increasingly cruel and personal. Finally, she delivered the ultimate blow. "Mark, darling, I know you think you're in love, but you're simply infatuated. Sarah is nothing more than a passing fancy. You'll come to your senses eventually." With that, she dismissed us, turning her back and resuming her tea. Mark and I stood there for a moment, speechless, before turning and walking out of the house. As we drove away, I felt a wave of despair wash over me. Patricia's words had hit their mark, leaving me doubting myself and my relationship with Mark. I wondered if she was right, if I truly wasn't good enough for him. That night, I tossed and turned in bed, unable to sleep. I replayed Patricia's insults in my mind, each one chipping away at my self-esteem. I started to question everything: my worth, my choices, my future with Mark. The next morning, I woke up feeling numb and defeated. The wedding was only hours away, but I couldn't muster any excitement or anticipation. I felt like a fraud, a pretender who was trying to infiltrate a world where I didn't belong. As I sat in the makeup chair, getting ready for the ceremony, my eyes welled up with tears. My bridesmaids tried to comfort me, but their words of encouragement felt hollow. I couldn't shake the feeling that Patricia had won, that she had successfully poisoned my happiness. Just as I was about to give up and call off the wedding, Mark walked into the room. He took one look at my face and rushed to my side. "Sarah, what's wrong?" he asked, his voice filled with concern. I poured out my heart to him, telling him about my doubts and fears, about Patricia's cruel words and their lingering effect. Mark listened patiently, holding my hand and offering words of reassurance. When I was finished, he looked me in the eyes and said, "Sarah, you are the most amazing woman I know. You are kind, intelligent, and beautiful, inside and out. I love you more than anything in the world, and I can't imagine my life without you. Don't let my mother's words get to you. She's just trying to manipulate us. Our love is stronger than her negativity." His words gave me a glimmer of hope, a spark of defiance. I realized that I couldn't let Patricia control my life, that I had to stand up for myself and for my relationship with Mark. I decided that I wouldn't let her ruin our wedding day. I would walk down that aisle with my head held high, and I would marry the man I loved, regardless of his mother's disapproval. With renewed determination, I finished getting ready, putting on my dress and veil with a newfound sense of purpose. As I looked at myself in the mirror, I saw a woman who was strong, resilient, and ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. But I also knew that I couldn't let Patricia get away with her behavior. I needed to find a way to stand up to her, to show her that I wouldn't be intimidated or bullied. As I walked towards the ceremony, a plan began to form in my mind, a plan that would not only protect my happiness but also expose Patricia's true nature to everyone. It was a risky plan, one that could potentially backfire, but I was willing to take the chance. I was ready to fight for my love, my happiness, and my future. The plan was set. It was time to put my strategy into motion, exposing Patricia in a way she would never forget. The ceremony was beautiful, despite Patricia's best efforts. The Texas Hill Country provided a stunning backdrop, and the wildflowers we managed to salvage added a touch of rustic charm. As I walked down the aisle, I focused on Mark, his blue eyes sparkling with love and anticipation. His smile was the only validation I needed. We exchanged vows, promising to love and cherish each other for eternity, and I felt a sense of peace and joy wash over me. For those brief moments, Patricia's negativity faded into the background, and I was able to fully immerse myself in the magic of the day. But as the reception began, Patricia's presence became increasingly intrusive. She cornered guests, whispering disparaging remarks about me and my family. She made snide comments about the decorations, the food, and the music. She even tried to sabotage the first dance, attempting to change the song at the last minute. I watched her, seething with anger as she continued her campaign of negativity. I knew I couldn't let her get away with it. It was time to put my plan into action. I asked the DJ to make an announcement, requesting everyone's attention for a special presentation. Patricia, sensing an opportunity to steal the spotlight, eagerly gathered around, a smug look on her face. I took a deep breath and stepped onto the stage, my heart pounding in my chest. "Good evening, everyone," I said, my voice clear and steady. "I want to take a moment to thank you all for being here to celebrate our special day. It means the world to Mark and me to have all of our loved ones gathered together." I paused, taking a sip of water to calm my nerves. "I also want to take this opportunity to acknowledge someone who has played a very important role in our lives, Mark's mother, Patricia." Patricia beamed, basking in the attention. "Patricia has been incredibly supportive throughout our wedding planning process," I continued, my voice dripping with sarcasm. "She has offered invaluable advice and guidance, and she has always had our best interests at heart." Patricia nodded approvingly, completely oblivious to the trap I was setting. "In fact," I said, "Patricia has been so involved in the wedding that we decided to dedicate a special slideshow to her, highlighting her contributions and showcasing her unique perspective." A confused murmur rippled through the crowd. Patricia's smile faltered slightly, but she remained confident that this was some sort of tribute to her. I nodded to the DJ, and the slideshow began. But instead of showcasing Patricia's contributions, it revealed a series of screenshots, text messages, and emails that exposed her sabotage and manipulation. There were photos of the canceled wildflower order, copies of emails where she had changed the menu, and screenshots of text messages where she had disparaged me and my family. As the slideshow progressed, the guests gasped in shock and disbelief. Patricia's face turned ashen, her eyes wide with horror. She tried to interrupt, to deny the evidence, but her voice was drowned out by the collective murmur of the crowd. The slideshow culminated in a recording of Patricia's rant at her house, the one where she had insulted me and my family and declared that I wasn't good enough for Mark. The recording played loud and clear, filling the room with her venomous words. By the time the slideshow ended, Patricia was completely humiliated and exposed. Her carefully constructed facade of Southern gentility had crumbled, revealing her true nature to everyone. The guests stared at her in stunned silence, their faces a mixture of shock, disgust, and pity. Mark stood beside me, his arm around my waist, his eyes filled with a mixture of anger and disappointment. He looked at his mother, his expression one of profound sadness. Patricia, realizing the extent of her exposure, burst into tears and fled the reception, her pearls scattering across the floor as she ran. The room remained silent for a moment, before erupting into a cacophony of whispers and murmurs. I had done it. I had exposed Patricia's true nature and defended my honor. But the victory felt hollow. I knew that this act would have lasting consequences, that it would forever alter my relationship with Mark and his family. And I couldn't help but wonder if I had gone too far, if my desire for revenge had blinded me to the potential fallout. Now, I had to face the aftermath of my actions and deal with the complex emotions and relationships that had been irrevocably changed. The aftermath of the slideshow was chaotic, to say the least. Some guests rushed to comfort Mark and me, offering words of support and condemnation of Patricia's behavior. Others whispered amongst themselves, gossiping about the scandal and speculating about the future of our marriage. Mark was visibly shaken, torn between his love for me and his loyalty to his mother. He excused himself to go and find her, leaving me to face the music alone. I stood there, feeling a mix of triumph and anxiety, wondering if I had made the right decision. Had I gone too far? Had I irreparably damaged my relationship with Mark? Had I turned our wedding day into a complete disaster? As the evening progressed, the atmosphere remained tense and awkward. Many guests left early, unable to stomach the drama. Those who stayed tried to put on a brave face, but the shadow of Patricia's exposure hung heavy in the air. When Mark finally returned, he looked exhausted and defeated. He told me that he had found his mother crying in her car, inconsolable and refusing to speak to him. He had tried to reason with her, to explain the pain she had caused, but she had simply dismissed him, accusing me of turning him against her. He admitted that he was angry and disappointed with her behavior, but he also felt a sense of obligation and pity. After all, she was still his mother. We spent the rest of the evening in a daze, going through the motions of the reception, but unable to truly enjoy ourselves. The joy and excitement that had filled the air earlier in the day had been replaced by a heavy cloud of sadness and uncertainty. As we drove away from the venue, I couldn't help but feel a sense of regret. While I was satisfied that I had exposed Patricia's true nature, I also knew that I had created a rift in the family that might never be healed. I wondered if the price of my revenge had been too high, if I had sacrificed my own happiness in the process. The following weeks were difficult, to say the least. Mark and I tried to navigate the complex emotions and relationships that had been shattered by the wedding day scandal. He spent hours on the phone with his mother, attempting to mend fences and understand her perspective. But Patricia remained unrepentant, blaming me for everything and refusing to take responsibility for her actions. She accused me of manipulating Mark, of turning him against her, and of deliberately trying to destroy her life. She even threatened to disown him if he stayed with me. Mark was torn. He loved me deeply, but he also felt a sense of obligation to his mother. He couldn't bear the thought of losing her, but he also couldn't imagine his life without me. He tried to balance his loyalties, but it was an impossible task. The constant tension and conflict took a toll on our relationship. We argued frequently, our conversations filled with accusations, defensiveness, and resentment. I felt like I was constantly walking on eggshells, afraid of saying or doing anything that might upset Mark or trigger another fight. One evening, after a particularly heated argument, Mark confessed that he was starting to doubt our future together. He admitted that he was struggling to reconcile his love for me with his loyalty to his mother, and that he didn't know if he could handle the constant conflict and drama. His words hit me like a punch to the gut. I realized that Patricia had succeeded in her mission, that she had managed to drive a wedge between Mark and me. I felt a wave of despair wash over me. Had I made a mistake? Should I have just let Patricia win? Was our love strong enough to overcome her negativity? As I sat there, contemplating the ruins of my relationship, I realized that I had a choice to make. I could continue to fight for Mark, to try to convince him that our love was worth the struggle. Or I could walk away, accepting that Patricia had won and that our relationship was doomed. The decision was agonizing, but I knew that I had to make it. I owed it to myself and to Mark to be honest about my feelings and my expectations. Whatever happened, I had to be true to myself, and I had to make a decision that would ultimately lead to my own happiness, even if it meant sacrificing my relationship with Mark. The clock was ticking, and I knew I had to choose my next move carefully. After a sleepless night of soul-searching, I knew what I had to do. The next morning, I sat down with Mark and told him that I couldn't continue to live in a state of constant conflict and uncertainty. I explained that I loved him deeply, but that I couldn't bear the thought of spending the rest of my life fighting his mother and struggling to balance his loyalties. I told him that I needed him to choose, to decide whether he was willing to prioritize our relationship over his obligation to his mother. I made it clear that I wouldn't pressure him, that I would respect whatever decision he made. But I also emphasized that I couldn't stay in a relationship where I felt like I was constantly competing with his mother for his attention and affection. Mark listened patiently, his eyes filled with sadness and understanding. He admitted that he had been struggling with the same questions, that he didn't know how to reconcile his love for me with his loyalty to his mother. He said that he needed time to think, to weigh his options, and to decide what was truly important to him. I agreed to give him the time he needed, but I also made it clear that I couldn't wait forever. I needed to know where I stood, and I needed to know that he was willing to fight for our relationship. In the days that followed, Mark and I lived in a state of limbo. We continued to live together, but we avoided talking about the future. We went through the motions of daily life, but the spark that had once ignited our relationship had dimmed. I spent my days working, trying to distract myself from the uncertainty and anxiety. I reconnected with old friends, pursued new hobbies, and focused on my own personal growth. I realized that I couldn't let my happiness depend on Mark's decision, that I had to find a way to be content and fulfilled regardless of what happened. As I focused on myself, I began to gain a new perspective on the situation. I realized that Patricia's behavior was not a reflection of my worth, but rather a manifestation of her own insecurities and prejudices. I understood that I couldn't change her, and that I couldn't control her actions. All I could do was control my own response, and choose to surround myself with people who loved and supported me for who I was. One evening, as I was walking Gus in the park, I received a phone call from Mark. He asked if we could meet, that he had something important to tell me. My heart pounded in my chest as I agreed to meet him at our favorite coffee shop. I knew that this was it, that he had finally made his decision. As I waited for him to arrive, I prepared myself for the worst. I knew that there was a good chance he would choose his mother over me, and I braced myself for the pain and disappointment that would follow. When Mark finally walked through the door, I could see the weight of the world in his eyes. He sat down across from me, took my hand, and said, "Sarah, I've made a decision. I'm choosing you." My heart leaped with joy and relief. I couldn't believe that he had actually chosen me, that he was willing to prioritize our relationship over his mother's approval. He explained that he had spent the past few days reflecting on our relationship, on the love and happiness we shared, and on the sacrifices I had made for him. He realized that Patricia's negativity was toxic, and that he couldn't allow her to control his life or dictate his choices. He said that he loved me more than anything in the world, and that he couldn't imagine his life without me. With tears in our eyes, we embraced, reaffirming our love and commitment to each other. We knew that the road ahead wouldn't be easy, that we would still have to deal with Patricia's disapproval and the fallout from the wedding day scandal. But we were confident that our love was strong enough to overcome any obstacle, and that we could build a future together, regardless of what anyone else thought. Now that Mark had made his choice, we needed to figure out how to move forward, how to navigate the complex dynamics of our family and relationships, and how to create a future that was both fulfilling and sustainable. It was time to embark on a new chapter, one filled with hope, resilience, and unwavering commitment to each other. In the months that followed, Mark and I worked hard to rebuild our relationship and create a new normal. We started by setting boundaries with Patricia, making it clear that we would no longer tolerate her negativity or interference in our lives. We told her that we loved her, but that we needed her to respect our choices and our relationship. We also made it clear that we wouldn't allow her to manipulate or guilt-trip us, and that we would distance ourselves from her if she continued to engage in toxic behavior. Patricia, initially resistant, eventually came to accept our boundaries. She realized that if she wanted to maintain a relationship with Mark, she had to treat me with respect and refrain from interfering in our lives. It wasn't easy, and there were still occasional flare-ups, but we managed to establish a level of peace and understanding. We also focused on strengthening our own bond, spending quality time together, communicating openly and honestly, and supporting each other through thick and thin. We learned to navigate conflicts constructively, to compromise and find solutions that worked for both of us. We also made a conscious effort to surround ourselves with positive, supportive people, friends and family who celebrated our love and encouraged our growth. As we healed and grew stronger as a couple, we began to think about the future. We decided to postpone our wedding plans, to give ourselves time to heal and rebuild our lives. We wanted to make sure that our next wedding would be a celebration of our love, not a battleground for family drama. We also started to explore our dreams and aspirations, both individually and as a couple. We talked about our careers, our travel goals, and our desire to start a family. We realized that we had a shared vision for the future, one filled with love, adventure, and meaningful experiences. With renewed hope and determination, we embarked on a new chapter of our lives, one filled with endless possibilities. But just as we started to feel like we were finally on solid ground, an unexpected twist occurred, one that would challenge our resilience and force us to confront the past in ways we never imagined. One sunny afternoon, about a year after the infamous wedding debacle, I received a letter in the mail. It was a formal, embossed envelope with a return address I didn't recognize. Curiosity piqued. I opened it to find an invitation. Patricia was getting remarried. My jaw dropped. Remarried. After everything that had happened, after all the drama and negativity she had inflicted on us, she was moving on and starting a new chapter of her own. The invitation was addressed to both Mark and me, which was even more surprising. Did she honestly think we would attend? Did she believe that we had forgiven her for her behavior? Was this some kind of olive branch or another twisted attempt to manipulate us? I showed the invitation to Mark, and he was just as shocked as I was. He hadn't spoken to his mother in months, not since she had made a particularly nasty comment about my family during a holiday dinner. He couldn't believe that she would invite us to her wedding, especially after everything that had happened. We spent hours debating whether or not to attend. On the one hand, we felt obligated to go, out of respect for Mark's family. On the other hand, we were hesitant to subject ourselves to Patricia's presence, fearing that it would reignite old wounds and create new conflicts. Ultimately, we decided to RSVP with a polite decline. We sent a card expressing our best wishes, but we made it clear that we wouldn't be able to attend the ceremony. We thought that was the end of it, that we had made our position clear, and that Patricia would respect our decision. But we were wrong. A few days before the wedding, Patricia called Mark, pleading with him to attend. She said that she was getting married in a small, intimate ceremony, and that it wouldn't be the same without him there. She claimed that she had changed, that she had learned from her mistakes, and that she genuinely wanted to make amends. She even apologized for her behavior at our wedding, admitting that she had been wrong and that she regretted the pain she had caused. Mark was torn. He wanted to believe that his mother had truly changed, but he was also wary of being manipulated. He knew that Patricia had a history of being dishonest and manipulative, and he didn't want to be taken advantage of. He turned to me for advice, unsure of what to do. I thought long and hard about it, weighing the pros and cons of attending Patricia's wedding. On the one hand, I didn't want to subject myself to her presence, especially after everything she had done to me. On the other hand, I didn't want to stand in the way of Mark's relationship with his mother. I knew that he longed for her approval and acceptance, and I didn't want to deny him the opportunity to reconcile with her. Ultimately, I decided to support Mark's decision, whatever it may be. I told him that I would be there for him, regardless of whether he chose to attend the wedding or not. I also made it clear that I would respect his boundaries and that I wouldn't allow Patricia to treat me poorly. With my support, Mark decided to attend the wedding. He called his mother and told her that he would be there, but that I wouldn't be joining him. He explained that I needed more time to heal from the past and that I wasn't ready to be in her presence just yet. Patricia accepted his decision, albeit reluctantly. She thanked him for coming and promised to be on her best behavior. On the day of the wedding, Mark got dressed in his best suit and prepared to face his mother. He was nervous and apprehensive, but he was also hopeful that this would be an opportunity to mend fences and start anew. I watched him go, my heart filled with a mixture of love, concern, and trepidation. I knew that this was a big step for him, and I hoped that it wouldn't backfire. As he drove away, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was amiss, that Patricia had an ulterior motive for inviting him to the wedding. I decided to trust my instincts and prepare for the worst. I knew that Patricia was capable of anything, and I wasn't willing to let her hurt Mark again. I resolved to be ready to intervene if necessary, to protect Mark and our relationship from any potential harm. But I had no idea what Patricia had in store for us, and I couldn't have imagined the shocking revelation that would soon come to light. The day was full of anxiety and anticipation, as I wondered what was happening at Patricia's wedding and what the future held for us. Hours later, Mark returned home, his face pale and drawn. He walked through the door in a daze, unable to speak. I rushed to his side, my heart pounding in my chest. "What happened?" I asked, my voice trembling with concern. He shook his head, unable to find the words. I led him to the sofa, sat him down, and waited patiently for him to compose himself. Finally, after several minutes of silence, he began to speak. "It was a setup," he said, his voice barely a whisper. "The whole thing was a trap." He explained that when he arrived at the wedding, he was greeted by Patricia and her new husband, a wealthy older man named Richard. They were both overly friendly and solicitous, showering him with attention and praise. He was initially relieved, thinking that maybe Patricia had actually changed. But as the ceremony progressed, he began to notice some strange things. First, he realized that the guest list was filled with people he didn't know, all of whom were wealthy and influential members of Patricia's social circle. He also noticed that Patricia kept glancing at him, a smug look on her face, as if she were waiting for something to happen. Then, during the reception, Richard stood up to make a toast. He thanked everyone for coming and expressed his love for Patricia. But then, he dropped a bombshell. He announced that he and Patricia had decided to donate a large sum of money to a local charity, in honor of their marriage. But there was a catch. He said that they would only make the donation if Mark agreed to publicly apologize to Patricia for his behavior at our wedding. He claimed that Mark had disrespected his mother and embarrassed her in front of her friends and family, and that he needed to make amends. Mark was stunned. He couldn't believe that Patricia would stoop so low, using her own wedding as an opportunity to humiliate him and force him to apologize. He refused to do it, telling Richard that he had nothing to apologize for and that Patricia was the one who had behaved badly. Patricia then stepped in, pleading with Mark to reconsider. She said that the donation would make a huge difference in the lives of underprivileged children, and that he would be selfish and cruel to deny them that opportunity. She even started to cry, accusing him of ruining her special day. Mark was torn. He wanted to do the right thing, but he also couldn't bring himself to apologize for something he didn't believe he had done wrong. He looked around the room, seeing the expectant faces of Patricia's wealthy friends, all of whom were eager to see him squirm. He realized that he was trapped, that Patricia had deliberately set him up to be humiliated and manipulated. He felt a surge of anger and resentment, realizing that his mother was never going to change, that she was always going to put her own selfish desires above his happiness. He walked out of the wedding, leaving Patricia and her new husband to face the consequences of their actions. As Mark finished his story, I felt a wave of fury wash over me. I couldn't believe that Patricia would be so cruel and manipulative, that she would use her own son as a pawn in her twisted game. I knew that I had to do something, that I couldn't let her get away with this. It was time to unleash the ultimate revenge, to expose Patricia's true nature to the world and put an end to her reign of terror once and for all. But how? What could I possibly do that would be more devastating than the slideshow at our wedding? As I pondered my options, a brilliant idea began to form in my mind, a plan so audacious and unexpected that it would leave Patricia speechless and humiliated beyond repair. The pieces were falling into place, and I knew that this time, Patricia wouldn't stand a chance. The final act was about to begin, and I was determined to make it a performance she would never forget. I spent the next few days meticulously planning my revenge. I knew that I had to strike hard and fast, before Patricia had a chance to recover from her failed attempt to manipulate Mark. I decided to focus on her reputation, the one thing she valued above all else. I knew that she craved the approval of her wealthy and influential friends, and that she would do anything to maintain her social standing. So, I decided to expose her hypocrisy and reveal her true character to the world, in a way that would be impossible to ignore. I started by gathering evidence, collecting every email, text message, and recording that documented Patricia's manipulative and deceitful behavior. I also reached out to some of her former friends and acquaintances, people who had been burned by her in the past, and asked them to share their stories. I was amazed by how many people were willing to speak out, eager to expose Patricia's true nature. With their help, I pieced together a comprehensive portrait of Patricia as a selfish, entitled, and manipulative socialite, a woman who would stop at nothing to get what she wanted. Once I had gathered all the evidence, I decided to create a website, a digital repository of Patricia's misdeeds. I called it The Real Patricia, and I filled it with damning information about her past, including her failed marriages, her financial scandals, and her mistreatment of her family and friends. I also included transcripts of her most offensive comments, as well as photos and videos that revealed her true personality. I made sure that the website was visually appealing and easy to navigate, so that anyone could access it and learn the truth about Patricia. Once the website was complete, I needed to find a way to get it in front of the right people. I decided to target Patricia's social circle, the wealthy and influential individuals whose approval she craved. I created a targeted email list comprised of Patricia's friends, family members, and business associates. I then drafted a compelling email, inviting them to visit the real Patricia and learn the truth about the woman they thought they knew. I made sure that the email was respectful and professional, avoiding any personal attacks or inflammatory language. I wanted the evidence to speak for itself, to let Patricia's own words and actions condemn her. With the website and email ready to go, I waited for the perfect moment to launch my revenge. I knew that I had to time it just right, to maximize the impact and ensure that Patricia couldn't ignore it. I decided to wait until after her honeymoon, when she would be returning to her social circle, eager to show off her new husband and bask in the glow of her newfound happiness. I figured that the contrast between her public image and the reality revealed on the website would be all the more shocking and devastating. As Patricia's honeymoon drew to a close, I prepared to unleash my revenge. I double-checked the website, ensuring that everything was accurate and up to date. I reviewed the email list, making sure that it was properly segmented and targeted. I took a deep breath, steeled my nerves, and hit send. The emails went out and the website went live. The world was about to learn the truth about Patricia, and there was nothing she could do to stop it. As I waited for the fallout, I couldn't help but feel a sense of anticipation and excitement. I knew that this was going to be the ultimate revenge, the one that would finally bring Patricia to justice and put an end to her reign of terror. But I also knew that there would be consequences, that my actions would have a lasting impact on my life and my relationships. I was prepared to face those consequences, knowing that I had done what was necessary to protect myself and the people I loved. The waiting game had begun, and I was ready to see how Patricia would react when she learned that her carefully constructed world was about to come crashing down. The response was immediate and overwhelming. Within hours of sending the emails, the Real Patricia website was flooded with traffic. People were sharing the link on social media, forwarding the emails to their friends and colleagues, and posting comments on the website, expressing their shock and disbelief. Patricia's carefully cultivated reputation was crumbling before her very eyes. Her friends and acquaintances began to distance themselves from her, canceling lunch dates, declining invitations, and unfollowing her on social media. Her phone rang nonstop, with angry calls from business associates, demanding explanations for the scandals revealed on the website. Her new husband, Richard, was furious. He confronted her about the lies and deceit, accusing her of manipulating him into marrying her. He threatened to divorce her and take back the money he had invested in her business ventures. Patricia was in a state of panic, desperately trying to control the damage. She hired a lawyer to try and shut down the website, but it was too late. The information was already out there, spreading like wildfire. She tried to contact her friends and apologize, but they refused to take her calls. She was ostracized and humiliated, her social standing in ruins. As the days went by, Patricia's life continued to unravel. Her business collapsed, her marriage fell apart, and she was left alone, isolated and disgraced. She became a pariah in her own community, shunned by everyone she knew. Eventually, she was forced to sell her mansion and move away, seeking refuge in a small, anonymous town. She had lost everything, all because of her own selfish and manipulative behavior. Meanwhile, Mark and I watched from afar, feeling a mixture of satisfaction and sadness. We were glad that Patricia had finally been brought to justice, but we also felt a sense of pity for her. We knew that she had brought this upon herself, but we couldn't help but feel sorry for the lonely and broken woman she had become. We decided to move on with our lives, focusing on our own happiness and building a future together. We got married in a small, intimate ceremony, surrounded by our closest friends and family. We bought a house in the country, adopted a few more rescue dogs, and started a family of our own. We never forgot what Patricia had done to us, but we refused to let her define our lives. We learned from our experiences, becoming stronger and more resilient. We vowed to always be honest and compassionate, and to never let bitterness or revenge consume us. As the years went by, Patricia faded into the background, becoming a distant memory. We occasionally heard rumors about her, whispers about her struggles and her lonely existence. But we never reached out to her, knowing that it was best to keep our distance. We had closed that chapter of our lives, and we were ready to embrace the future with open hearts and minds. In the end, my revenge had been successful. Patricia had been exposed and humiliated, and she had paid the price for her actions. But I also learned that revenge is not always the answer, that it can be a destructive force that consumes both the victim and the perpetrator. I realized that true happiness comes from forgiveness, compassion, and the ability to let go of the past. And as I looked at Mark and our children, I knew that I had finally found that happiness, a happiness that Patricia could never take away. And that, in the end, was the greatest revenge of all. Life had settled into a comfortable rhythm. Mark and I were happily married, living in our cozy farmhouse with our 2 kids, a golden retriever named Max and a perpetually grumpy cat named Agnes. My graphic design business was thriving, and Mark was excelling in his career as an architect. Patricia, thankfully, remained a distant figure, her name rarely uttered in our home. We had built a life free from her negativity and manipulation, a life filled with love, laughter, and genuine connection. Or so I thought. One crisp autumn morning, as I was sipping my coffee and scrolling through social media, I stumbled upon a picture that sent a jolt of ice through my veins. It was a photo of Patricia, looking shockingly frail and gaunt, sitting in a wheelchair outside a nursing home. The caption, written by a woman I didn't recognize, read, "Visiting my sweet grandma, Patricia, at Willow Creek Assisted Living. She's been having a tough time lately, but her spirit is still shining bright." My first instinct was to dismiss it, to tell myself that Patricia deserved whatever hardships she was facing. But as I stared at the photo, I couldn't shake a nagging feeling of guilt and unease. Despite everything she had done to me, she was still Mark's mother. And regardless of how much I disliked her, I couldn't deny that she was a human being, deserving of compassion and care. I showed the photo to Mark, and his reaction was even more intense than mine. He was visibly shaken, his eyes filled with a mixture of concern and regret. He hadn't seen or spoken to his mother in years, and he had no idea that she was in such poor health. He immediately felt a surge of guilt, wondering if he had abandoned her in her time of need. We spent the rest of the day in a somber mood, wrestling with our emotions and trying to decide what to do. Should we reach out to Patricia, offering our support and assistance? Or should we continue to keep our distance, protecting ourselves from her negativity and manipulation? The decision was not an easy one. On the one hand, we had every reason to resent Patricia and want nothing to do with her. On the other hand, we couldn't ignore the fact that she was a vulnerable and elderly woman in need of help. After much soul-searching, we decided to pay her a visit. We agreed that we wouldn't let her back into our lives completely, but we would offer her some basic assistance and support. We would visit her at the nursing home, bring her some gifts, and make sure that she was receiving proper care. We would do it for Mark's sake, and for the sake of our own consciences. The next day, we drove to Willow Creek Assisted Living, a sprawling facility located on the outskirts of town. As we approached the building, I couldn't help but feel a sense of apprehension. I had no idea what to expect, or how Patricia would react to our presence. We walked into the lobby and asked the receptionist to direct us to Patricia's room. She gave us a sympathetic look and pointed us down a long hallway. As we walked down the hallway, I noticed the other residents, frail and elderly people sitting in wheelchairs or shuffling slowly down the hall. Their faces were etched with wrinkles, and their eyes were filled with a mixture of sadness and resignation. It was a sobering reminder of the realities of aging and the importance of compassion and care. We finally reached Patricia's room and hesitated before knocking. I took a deep breath, trying to steel my nerves. Mark reached out and gently knocked on the door. A faint voice responded, "Come in." We slowly opened the door and stepped inside. The room was small and sparsely furnished, with a single bed, a small dresser, and a television. Patricia was sitting in a wheelchair by the window, gazing out at the scenery. She looked even more frail and gaunt than she had in the photo. Her hair was thin and gray, her skin was pale and wrinkled, and her eyes were sunken and weary. She turned to look at us, and her eyes widened in surprise. "Mark," she said, her voice raspy and weak. "Sarah, what are you doing here?" Mark stepped forward and took her hand. "Mom, we saw the photo on social media," he said, his voice filled with concern. "We wanted to come and see how you were doing." Patricia's eyes filled with tears. "Oh, Mark," she said, her voice trembling. "It's been so long. I've missed you so much." I couldn't help but feel a pang of sympathy for her. Despite everything she had done, she was still a mother, longing for her son's love and affection. We spent the next hour talking with Patricia, catching up on her life and learning about her struggles. She told us that she had been diagnosed with a serious illness and that she was receiving treatment at the nursing home. She admitted that she had made mistakes in the past and that she regretted the pain she had caused us. She said that she was sorry for the way she had treated me and that she wished she could take it all back. I listened to her words, trying to discern whether she was being genuine or if she was simply trying to manipulate us. But as I looked into her eyes, I saw a glimmer of sincerity. I realized that she had finally come to terms with her past and that she was truly remorseful for her actions. As we were leaving, Patricia took my hand and squeezed it tightly. "Sarah," she said, her voice filled with emotion. "Thank you for coming, it means more than you know." I smiled at her, offering a genuine expression of forgiveness. "You're welcome, Patricia," I said. "We'll come back to visit soon." As we walked out of the nursing home, I felt a sense of relief and closure. We had finally made peace with Patricia, and we had taken the first step towards mending our fractured relationship. But as we drove away, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was still amiss. There was something about Patricia's demeanor that didn't quite add up. Was she truly remorseful, or was she hiding something? Only time would tell, but I knew that I had to be prepared for anything. Little did I know that Patricia's illness was just the beginning of a new chapter of deception and manipulation, one that would test our love and our loyalty in ways we never imagined. Life settled into a routine of visiting Patricia every week. We would bring her flowers, books, and magazines, and we would spend a few hours chatting with her about her life and her health. She seemed genuinely grateful for our visits, and she made an effort to be kind and pleasant. I started to believe that she had truly changed, that she had finally learned from her mistakes and was ready to make amends. Mark was overjoyed. He had always longed for his mother's approval and acceptance, and he was thrilled to see that she was finally treating me with respect and affection. He started to visit her more often, even when I wasn't able to come along. He would spend hours talking with her about his life, his career, and his family. He seemed to be reconnecting with her in a way that he hadn't been able to do in years. I was happy for him, but I also felt a nagging sense of unease. I couldn't shake the feeling that Patricia was still hiding something, that she was using her illness to manipulate us and gain our sympathy. I tried to voice my concerns to Mark, but he brushed them aside, accusing me of being paranoid and judgmental. He said that I was being unfair to Patricia and that I needed to give her a chance to prove that she had changed. I didn't want to argue with him, so I kept my feelings to myself. But I couldn't shake the feeling that we were being played, that Patricia was leading us down a dangerous path. One afternoon, as we were visiting Patricia, she started to talk about her will. She said that she had been thinking a lot about her legacy and that she wanted to make sure that her assets were distributed fairly among her loved ones. She mentioned that she had recently updated her will and that she had made some significant changes. She didn't elaborate on the details, but she hinted that Mark would be very pleased with the new arrangement. Mark was flattered, but I was immediately suspicious. I knew that Patricia was a wealthy woman and that she had a substantial estate. I couldn't imagine why she would be so eager to share her wealth with us, especially after everything that had happened in the past. I suspected that she had an ulterior motive, that she was using her will as a way to control us and manipulate us into doing her bidding. After we left the nursing home, I voiced my concerns to Mark. I told him that I didn't trust Patricia and that I thought she was up to something. I urged him to be cautious and to not get his hopes up about her will. Mark was dismissive of my concerns, accusing me of being greedy and cynical. He said that I was being unfair to Patricia and that I needed to give her the benefit of the doubt. He insisted that she had changed and that she was genuinely trying to make amends for her past mistakes. I didn't want to argue with him, so I dropped the subject. But I couldn't shake the feeling that we were walking into a trap, that Patricia was setting us up for a major disappointment. A few weeks later, Patricia's health took a turn for the worse. She was admitted to the hospital with a serious infection, and her condition deteriorated rapidly. Mark was devastated. He spent every day at the hospital, holding her hand and praying for her recovery. I tried to be supportive, but I couldn't help but feel a sense of detachment. I knew that Patricia was ill, but I couldn't shake the feeling that she was exaggerating her symptoms, using her illness to manipulate Mark and gain his sympathy. One evening, as Mark was leaving the hospital, Patricia called him over to her bedside. She said that she had something important to tell him, something that she had been meaning to say for a long time. She told him that she loved him and that she was proud of the man he had become. She apologized for all the pain she had caused him in the past, and she said that she hoped he could forgive her. Mark was overcome with emotion. He told her that he loved her too and that he forgave her for everything. He held her hand tightly, tears streaming down his face. As he was leaving the room, Patricia whispered something in his ear, something that would change our lives forever. She told him that she had hidden a valuable piece of jewelry in her room at the nursing home, a diamond necklace that had been in her family for generations. She said that she wanted him to have it, as a symbol of her love and forgiveness. Mark was stunned. He had no idea that Patricia possessed such a valuable heirloom. He thanked her for her generosity, and he promised to retrieve the necklace as soon as possible. The next day, after Patricia passed away peacefully in her sleep, Mark went to the nursing home to collect her belongings. He searched her room thoroughly, but he couldn't find the diamond necklace. He asked the nurses and staff members if they had seen it, but no one knew anything about it. He was confused and frustrated. He couldn't understand why Patricia would tell him about the necklace if it didn't exist. He began to wonder if she had been delirious, or if she had simply been playing another one of her manipulative games. As he was about to give up, he noticed a small, locked box hidden in the back of her closet. He tried to open it, but it was securely fastened. He decided to take it home, hoping that he could find a way to unlock it. That night after the funeral, Mark sat down at his desk and examined the box. He tried to pry it open with a screwdriver, but it wouldn't budge. He considered taking it to a locksmith, but he was worried that they would damage the contents. Finally, he decided to try a combination lock, hoping that Patricia had used a familiar code. He started with her birth date, but it didn't work. He tried our wedding anniversary, but that didn't work either. He was about to give up when he had a sudden inspiration. He remembered that Patricia had always been obsessed with the number 17, claiming that it was her lucky number. He decided to try that as the combination. He carefully entered the numbers 171717. He held his breath and turned the dial. To his amazement, the lock clicked open. He slowly opened the box and peered inside. He was expecting to find the diamond necklace, but what he found was far more shocking. Inside the box was a stack of documents, including a copy of Patricia's will, a letter addressed to Mark, and a photograph. Mark picked up the letter and began to read. As he read the words, his face turned white with anger and disbelief. He couldn't believe what he was reading. It was a confession, a detailed account of all the ways that Patricia had tried to sabotage our relationship and ruin my life. But that wasn't all. The letter also revealed a shocking secret, a secret that would shatter our world and change everything we thought we knew about Patricia and her motives. The secret was so scandalous, so outrageous, that it left me questioning everything. I knew then, with a certainty that chilled me to the bone, that the game wasn't over. It had just entered a terrifying new phase. The letter detailed Patricia's long-held belief that Mark was never meant to be with someone like me. Someone in her eyes beneath the family's stature. The revelation that truly shook us, however, was the photograph included in the box. It was a picture of a young woman, strikingly beautiful, with a familiar set of piercing blue eyes, eyes that I had only ever seen in Mark and Patricia. On the back of the photo, a short, chilling sentence was scrawled. "The daughter you never knew." Mark was reeling. He had always believed he was an only child. The letter explained that Patricia had given birth to a daughter out of wedlock many years ago, a daughter she gave up for adoption to protect the family's reputation. The young woman in the photo was Mark's sister, a sister he never knew existed. But the most unsettling part was the reason Patricia kept her a secret for so long. According to the letter, Patricia had recently tracked down her daughter, named Emily, and discovered that she was struggling financially. In her twisted mind, Patricia decided that the only way to help Emily was to manipulate Mark into giving her a share of his inheritance. Her plan was to use her illness and her supposed deathbed confession to guilt Mark into providing for his long-lost sister. The diamond necklace was a complete fabrication, a lure to get Mark to search her room and find the box containing the letter and the photograph. It was a truly Machiavellian scheme, even for Patricia. Mark was furious. He felt betrayed and manipulated by his own mother. He couldn't believe that she would use her illness and her secret daughter to try and control him from beyond the grave. We spent the rest of the night discussing what to do. Should we contact Emily and tell her the truth? Should we confront Patricia's lawyer and challenge the will? Or should we simply ignore the letter and try to move on with our lives? The decision was not an easy one. On the one hand, we felt obligated to tell Emily the truth about her mother and her brother. On the other hand, we were worried about the potential consequences of revealing such a shocking secret. We knew that it could disrupt Emily's life and cause her a great deal of pain. After much deliberation, we decided to contact a lawyer. We wanted to get legal advice before taking any further action. We made an appointment to meet with a reputable attorney the following day. The lawyer listened patiently as we explained the situation, showing her the letter and the photograph. She was taken aback by the details of Patricia's scheme, calling it one of the most bizarre and manipulative cases she had ever seen. She advised us to proceed with caution, warning us that the legal battle could be long and expensive. She also suggested that we consider contacting Emily, but she cautioned us to be sensitive and respectful of her feelings. After the meeting, we felt even more confused and uncertain. We knew that we had to do something, but we weren't sure what the best course of action was. We decided to sleep on it and make a decision in the morning. That night, I had a dream about Patricia. In the dream, she was standing in front of me, her eyes filled with anger and resentment. She accused me of ruining her life and turning Mark against her. She warned me that she would never let me be happy, that she would haunt me from beyond the grave. I woke up in a cold sweat, my heart pounding in my chest. I couldn't shake the feeling that Patricia was still trying to control us, even from beyond the grave. I knew that I had to fight back, that I couldn't let her win. The next morning, I woke up with a renewed sense of determination. I knew what I had to do. I decided to contact Emily. I spent hours searching for her online, using the information from the photograph and the letter. Finally, I found her on social media. She had a public profile, with photos and information about her life and her career. She seemed like a kind and compassionate person, someone who had overcome a great deal of adversity. I hesitated for a moment, wondering if I was making the right decision. But then I remembered Patricia's manipulative scheme, and I knew that I couldn't let her get away with it. I sent Emily a message, introducing myself and explaining that I had some important information to share with her. I didn't reveal the details of Patricia's letter, but I hinted that it had to do with her family history. I asked her if she would be willing to meet with me in person so that I could explain everything in detail. To my surprise, Emily responded almost immediately. She said that she was curious to learn more about her family history and that she would be happy to meet with me. We arranged to meet at a coffee shop the following day. As I waited for Emily to arrive, I couldn't help but feel a sense of anxiety. I knew that I was about to turn her world upside down, and I wasn't sure how she would react. But I also knew that I was doing the right thing, that I was helping her to uncover the truth about her past. The bell above the door jingled, and I looked up to see Emily walking towards me. As she got closer, I was struck by her resemblance to Mark. She had the same piercing blue eyes, the same warm smile, and the same kind and gentle demeanor. I stood up and extended my hand. "Emily," I said, my voice trembling slightly. "It's so nice to finally meet you." Emily smiled and took my hand. "Sarah," she said, "the pleasure is all mine." We sat down and ordered our coffee. As we waited for our drinks, I took a deep breath and prepared to tell Emily the truth about her mother, her brother, and the twisted scheme that had brought us together. I knew that this conversation would change everything, but I was determined to be honest and compassionate, to help Emily navigate the difficult journey ahead. As I started to speak, a chilling realization dawned on me. I wasn't just about to change Emily's life. I was about to unleash a force far more powerful and unpredictable than I could have ever imagined. I started by telling Emily about Mark, explaining that he was Patricia's son, and that, unbeknownst to him, he also had a sister. I carefully described Patricia's manipulative nature, emphasizing her desire to control and her willingness to use others to get what she wanted. Emily listened intently, her expression shifting from curiosity to disbelief. When I finally revealed Patricia's scheme to use her illness and death to guilt Mark into providing for her, Emily's eyes widened in shock. She couldn't believe that her own mother would be capable of such a thing. I then showed her the photograph and the letter, allowing her to read Patricia's confession in her own words. As she read, tears streamed down her face. She was overwhelmed by the revelation that she had a brother, and heartbroken by the knowledge that her mother had kept her a secret for so long. When she finished reading, she looked up at me, her eyes filled with a mixture of anger and sadness. "I don't understand," she said, her voice trembling. "Why would she do this? Why would she keep me a secret all these years and then try to use me to manipulate my brother?" I sighed and shook my head. "I don't know, Emily," I said. "Patricia was a very complex and troubled woman. She had her own reasons for doing things, and they weren't always rational or logical. But I do know that she was wrong and that you deserve to know the truth. Emily nodded slowly, her mind racing to process the information. What do you think I should do? She asked. I paused for a moment, considering the options. That's up to you, Emily, I said. You can choose to ignore this information and move on with your life, or you can choose to confront Mark and Patricia's lawyer and challenge the will. You can even choose to reach out to Mark and try to build a relationship with him. The choice is yours. Emily thought for a moment, then took a deep breath. I want to meet Mark, she said. I want to get to know my brother. I also want to make sure that Patricia doesn't get away with this. I want to challenge the will and make sure that she doesn't use her money to control us from beyond the grave. I smiled and nodded. I'll help you with whatever you decide, I said. We spent the rest of the afternoon discussing our plans. We agreed to contact Mark and tell him about Emily, and we decided to hire our own lawyer to challenge Patricia's will. We knew that it wouldn't be easy, but we were determined to fight for what was right. The next day, I called Mark and told him that I had something important to tell him. I asked him to meet me at our favorite park. When he arrived, I led him to a secluded bench and sat him down. I took a deep breath and began to explain. I told him about Emily, about Patricia's letter, and about her scheme to manipulate him from beyond the grave. Mark listened in stunned silence, his face growing paler with each word. When I finished, he was speechless. He couldn't believe that his own mother would be capable of such a thing. After a few minutes of silence, he finally spoke. I need to meet her, he said, his voice barely a whisper. I need to meet my sister. I smiled and nodded. I know, I said. I've already arranged it. She's waiting for us at the coffee shop. We drove to the coffee shop in silence, our minds racing with thoughts and emotions. When we arrived, Emily was waiting for us, sitting at a table by the window. As Mark walked towards her, I could see the emotions swirling in his eyes. He was nervous, excited, and overwhelmed. When he reached the table, he stopped and stared at Emily for a moment, his eyes filled with tears. Emily, he said, his voice trembling. Emily stood up and smiled. Mark, she said. They embraced, a long and heartfelt hug that seemed to last forever. As I watched them, I couldn't help but feel a sense of hope and joy. Despite Patricia's best efforts, her manipulative scheme had backfired, bringing her two children together in a bond of love and kinship. But I also knew that the battle was far from over. We still had to challenge Patricia's will and expose her true nature to the world. And I had a feeling that Patricia had one more trick up her sleeve, a final act of revenge that would test our love and our loyalty in ways we never imagined. Little did I know that Patricia's final act would involve a shocking revelation about Emily's past, a revelation that would not only change her life, but also expose a dark secret that Patricia had kept hidden for decades. We spent the next several weeks working together to challenge Patricia's will. Mark, Emily, and I formed a united front, determined to expose Patricia's manipulation and ensure that her wealth was distributed fairly. We hired a tenacious lawyer who specialized in estate litigation, and she began to investigate Patricia's financial records and legal documents. As we dug deeper, we uncovered a web of deceit and hidden assets, revealing the extent of Patricia's wealth and her determination to control it from beyond the grave. We also discovered that Patricia had made several significant changes to her will in the months leading up to her death, shifting assets and altering beneficiaries in ways that seemed designed to maximize her control and minimize our inheritance. Our lawyer advised us that we had a strong case, but she cautioned us that the legal battle could be long and expensive. She also warned us that Patricia's lawyer was a formidable opponent, a ruthless and experienced litigator who would stop at nothing to protect her client's interests. Despite the challenges, we remained determined to fight for what was right. We knew that Patricia's manipulation had caused us a great deal of pain and suffering, and we were determined to prevent her from causing any more harm. As we prepared for the legal battle, Emily began to explore her own past, trying to piece together the missing pieces of her life. She contacted the adoption agency that had handled her case and requested information about her birth parents. She learned that her father was a wealthy businessman who had had a brief affair with Patricia many years ago. He had never known about Emily's existence, and he had since passed away. Emily was saddened by this revelation, but she was also determined to learn more about him. She tracked down some of his family members and began to build relationships with them. She discovered that she had several cousins, aunts, and uncles who were eager to welcome her into their lives. As Emily connected with her newfound family, she began to feel a sense of belonging and identity that she had never experienced before. She realized that she was not alone, that she had a network of loving and supportive people who cared about her and wanted to be a part of her life. Meanwhile, Mark and I continued to support Emily, offering her our love, guidance, and encouragement. We were amazed by her strength and resilience, and we were inspired by her determination to overcome the challenges of her past. We watched as she blossomed into a confident and independent woman, embracing her newfound identity and forging her own path in life. As the legal battle drew closer, we received a shocking piece of information that would change everything. Our lawyer informed us that she had discovered a hidden clause in Patricia's will, a clause that no one had noticed before. The clause stated that if Emily were to challenge the will, she would forfeit her right to any inheritance. This meant that if Emily pursued the legal battle, she would risk losing everything. We were stunned by this revelation. It was clear that Patricia had anticipated our challenge and had taken steps to protect her wealth from beyond the grave. We were faced with a difficult decision. Should we continue to support Emily in her legal battle, knowing that she could lose everything? Or should we advise her to back down, to protect her own financial interests? We knew that the decision was hers to make, but we also felt a responsibility to guide her and offer her our support. We gathered together to discuss our options, weighing the pros and cons of each choice. As we talked, Emily revealed a shocking secret about her past, a secret that she had kept hidden for many years. She told us that she had been diagnosed with a serious illness, an illness that would require expensive treatment. She had been hesitant to reveal this information, fearing that it would burden us or influence our decision. But she realized that we needed to know the truth so that we could make an informed choice about the future. Mark and I were stunned by this revelation. We couldn't believe that Emily was facing such a serious health challenge. We immediately offered her our support, promising to help her in any way that we could. Emily smiled and thanked us, but she also made it clear that she was determined to fight for her rights. She said that she didn't care about the money, that she was more concerned about exposing Patricia's manipulation and preventing her from causing any more harm. She was willing to risk everything to achieve that goal. As we listened to her words, we were filled with admiration and respect. We realized that Emily was a true force of nature, a woman who was willing to stand up for what she believed in, no matter the cost. We knew that we had to support her, to stand by her side as she faced the challenges ahead. We decided to continue with the legal battle, knowing that it would be a long and difficult road. But we were confident that we could overcome any obstacle, as long as we remained united and committed to our cause. The legal battle was about to begin, and we were ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. But little did we know that Patricia had one more secret to reveal, a final act of deception that would test our courage and our resilience in ways we never imagined. The legal battle was long and arduous, filled with twists and turns that kept us constantly on edge. Patricia's lawyer, a formidable woman named Ms. Harding, proved to be a relentless adversary, employing every tactic imaginable to defend her client's wishes. She argued that Patricia was a woman of sound mind when she made her will, and that her wishes should be respected, regardless of our personal feelings. She also attempted to discredit Emily, portraying her as a gold digger who was only interested in Patricia's money. We fought back with every weapon at our disposal, presenting evidence of Patricia's manipulative behavior and her attempts to control us from beyond the grave. We called witnesses who testified about Patricia's character, revealing her selfish and deceitful nature. We also presented expert testimony from a psychologist who explained how Patricia's personality disorder had influenced her decisions and actions. As the trial progressed, the tension in the courtroom grew thicker and thicker. Ms. Harding and our lawyer engaged in fierce verbal sparring, their arguments becoming increasingly personal and heated. Mark and I sat in the gallery, our hearts pounding with anxiety as we watched the legal drama unfold. Emily, despite her illness, remained strong and resolute, testifying with grace and conviction. She spoke eloquently about her desire to learn more about her past and her determination to prevent Patricia from causing any more harm. Her testimony was powerful and moving, swaying the jury and earning her the respect of everyone in the courtroom. As the trial neared its end, Ms. Harding launched a surprise attack, presenting evidence that threatened to derail our entire case. She revealed that Emily had a criminal record, a fact that we had been unaware of. She produced documents showing that Emily had been arrested several years ago for a minor offense, a charge that had been later dismissed. Ms. Harding argued that Emily's criminal record proved that she was not a trustworthy person and that she had a history of dishonesty and deceit. We were shocked by this revelation. We had no idea that Emily had a criminal past. We looked at her, our eyes filled with disbelief and betrayal. Emily, her face pale and drawn, hung her head in shame. She had been keeping this secret from us, fearing that it would damage our case and undermine our trust in her. After a moment of stunned silence, I stood up and addressed the court. I spoke passionately about Emily's character, emphasizing her kindness, her compassion, and her unwavering commitment to justice. I argued that her past mistakes did not define her, and that she deserved our forgiveness and understanding. Mark also spoke in Emily's defense, expressing his love and support for his sister. He told the jury that he believed in Emily's integrity and that he was proud to have her as his sister. The jury listened intently to our testimony, their faces etched with emotion. They seemed to be swayed by our words, recognizing the truth and sincerity in our voices. After several days of deliberation, the jury finally reached a verdict. They ruled in our favor, declaring that Patricia's will was invalid and that her assets should be distributed fairly among her heirs. We were overjoyed by the news. We had won. We had defeated Patricia's manipulation and secured justice for ourselves and for Emily. As we celebrated our victory, Emily approached me, her eyes filled with tears. She apologized for keeping her criminal record a secret from us, explaining that she had been ashamed of her past and afraid of our judgment. I embraced her tightly, telling her that we forgave her and that we still loved her. I explained that everyone makes mistakes and that it's how we learn from those mistakes that truly matters. Mark also embraced Emily, expressing his love and support. He told her that he was proud of her for overcoming her past and for becoming the strong and resilient woman she was today. As we celebrated our victory, I couldn't help but feel a sense of unease. Something about Ms. Harding's demeanor during the trial had struck me as odd. She seemed to be holding something back, a secret that she was desperate to protect. I had a feeling that there was more to the story than we knew, and that Patricia's final act of deception was yet to be revealed. Little did I know that the secret Ms. Harding was protecting was a shocking revelation about Emily's true identity, a revelation that would not only change our lives, but also expose a dark secret that Patricia had kept hidden for decades. The truth was far more twisted and sinister than we could have ever imagined, and it was about to shatter everything we thought we knew about our family and our past.